David and Claire had been married for only 3 weeks when they packed their bags for what was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime trip. While most newlyweds dreamed of beaches and resorts, they longed for isolation, a place where the world couldn't reach them. A friend of David's had mentioned a remote cabin in the Rocky Mountains, tucked so deep into the woods that even locals rarely visited. The idea of a hidden sanctuary sounded perfect, and without hesitation, the couple booked it for a full week. The cabin was said to be beautiful in its simplicity: a single fireplace, a wooden porch overlooking the trees, and miles of wilderness in every direction. Getting there, however, wasn't easy. They had to drive along winding, icy roads and then hike a short distance through thick snow to reach it. Despite the chill of the mountain air, David and Claire were filled with excitement. They laughed as they carried their suitcases through the drifts, imagining the cozy nights that awaited them inside the rustic walls. When they finally unlocked the cabin, it looked exactly as described: quaint, quiet, untouched. Dusty shelves lined the walls, a stack of firewood waited by the hearth, and the silence of the forest pressed in around them like a heavy blanket. Claire lit a candle, and marveled at how time seemed to stand still in that little wooden structure. The isolation felt romantic, almost surreal, as though they had stepped into a world all their own, where nothing bad could ever reach them. Locals had warned them about the weather. Winter storms in that region were unpredictable, known to appear suddenly and trap travelers for days. But David shrugged it off, assuring Claire they'd be fine. He even joked that a storm might be a blessing. It would give them more reason to stay inside, wrapped up by the fire. Claire smiled at the thought, never imagining that the same snow they laughed about would one day play a chilling role in their fate. That first evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, the couple toasted with glasses of wine and whispered about their future. The cabin seemed to hum with silence, the kind of quiet so deep it felt alive. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows ever so slightly, but inside they felt safe. What they didn't know was that beyond the warm glow of the fire, something was already waiting for them in the shadows of the endless forest. When David and Claire failed to return home after their planned week away, their families grew uneasy. At first, it seemed like a simple delay. Perhaps the snow had slowed them down, or maybe they decided to extend their stay in the mountains. But when days turned into a week with no phone calls, no letters, and no sign of the couple, worry shifted into panic. Their parents contacted the local sheriff, who quickly organized a small search party to check the cabin. The hike up to the cabin was grueling. Snow was thick, and the icy wind cut sharply against the rescuers' faces. Still, they pressed on, guided by the faint trail David and Claire had likely taken days earlier. When they finally reached the cabin, the place looked untouched. Quiet, almost too quiet. The search team expected signs of struggle, or at least tracks leading away from the site. But instead, they were greeted by something far more unsettling: silence and perfection, as though nothing had ever gone wrong. Inside, the cabin felt frozen in time. 2 wine glasses sat on the wooden table, one still containing the faint scent of red wine. The bed was neatly made, as if no one had slept in it. Claire's suitcase rested against the wall, still zipped, and David's jacket hung on the hook by the door. Nothing was out of place, nothing was missing, and nothing suggested that the newlyweds had left in a hurry. To investigators, it was as if the couple had stepped outside for a moment, but never returned. More unsettling was the snow surrounding the cabin. Normally, a person leaving would leave footprints, evidence of direction, distance, and maybe even a clue of what happened next. But the ground outside was perfectly smooth, covered by fresh powder, with no marks of human steps, animal tracks, or even disturbed snow leading into the forest. Searchers walked in circles, scanning for any sign of movement, but found nothing. It was as though David and Claire had simply evaporated into the cold air. As the hours stretched on, the rescuers' unease deepened. They scoured the cabin again, checking under the bed, opening drawers, even lifting floorboards hoping to find anything. A note, a clue, some trace of departure. But there was nothing. The couple had vanished without explanation, and the cabin stood as an eerie monument to their last known moments, frozen in perfect order, surrounded by miles of untouched snow. News of the couple's disappearance spread quickly through the small mountain town. Locals were unsettled but not surprised. Many had always regarded the cabin with a quiet unease. For years, whispers had circulated that the place carried a strange energy, a heaviness that seemed to hang in the air. Some residents even admitted that they had warned David and Claire not to stay there, but their words had been brushed aside as nothing more than superstitious rambling. Now, with 2 people gone without a trace, the whispers grew louder. Newspapers seized the story, splashing headlines across their pages about the vanishing newlyweds. Some reporters speculated about foul play, suggesting that a hidden intruder might have been living in the woods, waiting for unsuspecting visitors. Others spun darker theories, stories of cult activity, and strange rituals in the forest, and sightings of shadowy figures near the cabin late at night. Every article only fueled the public's curiosity, turning the mystery into a national obsession. As the weeks passed, locals began to share their own chilling encounters. Hunters swore they had heard voices calling their names in the dead of night, soft, distant, and unmistakably human. Hikers reported seeing flickers of light moving between the trees, even though the forest had no electricity for miles. One man claimed he heard a woman's scream echo through the valley, only to find himself completely alone when he searched. None of these accounts could be proven, but each one added fuel to the growing legend. The families of David and Claire pleaded with authorities to keep searching, but the more time passed, the more hopeless it seemed. With no bodies, no tracks, and no sign of struggle, investigators were left with nothing but theories. And as the official investigation slowed, the stories from the townspeople began to fill the silence. They said the cabin was cursed, that it was built on ground where something terrible had happened long before. Others whispered about the mountain itself, that the forest didn't just hide secrets, it kept them. In the absence of answers, fear became the town's reality. Parents forbade their children from wandering too far into the woods. Travelers who once rented cabins nearby canceled their stays. Even seasoned hunters began avoiding the ridge where the Newlyweds had disappeared. What had started as a tragic missing persons case was transforming into something else entirely. An unsolved legend that would haunt the mountains for years to come. As the years dragged on, the cabin itself became more than just a structure in the woods. It became a symbol of fear. What was once seen as a cozy retreat for honeymooners or weekend adventurers now carried the weight of dark folklore. Hikers passing near the ridge would pause, glancing at the crooked silhouette of the cabin against the trees, and quicken their pace. To many, it was no longer just wood and stone, but a place where something unspeakable had happened, something that might still linger inside its walls. Stories began to spread about those who dared to enter. A few brave souls, mostly teenagers seeking thrills, claimed they had ventured into the abandoned cabin at night. They described the air inside as colder than the surrounding forest, heavy with a smell of damp earth and something metallic, like rust or old blood. One boy swore he saw fresh footprints on the floorboards, though no one else was there. Another girl claimed she heard faint knocking from under the floor, a sound that grew louder the longer she stayed. None of them lingered for more than a few minutes before fleeing in terror. Despite these rumors, the cabin remained standing. Authorities were pressed by the families to demolish it, but there was no official reason to do so. Legally, it was just another old mountain cabin, sitting on neglected land. To locals, though, it was an open wound, something that should have been destroyed long ago. Some said the forest itself wanted the cabin to remain, that no matter how much snow battered its roof, or how many storms shook its foundation, it refused to crumble completely. Even those who avoided the cabin couldn't escape its presence. Hunters reported feeling eyes on them when walking near its perimeter, an unnatural sensation of being followed. Campers pitched their tents miles away, but still claimed to hear creaking wood, and faint whispers carried on the wind. Some swore that on the coldest nights, the cabin's single window glowed faintly, as if lit from within, though no one had stepped foot inside in years. It was as if the place had developed a life of its own, feeding on the fear that surrounded it. The reputation of the cabin grew so strong that it shaped the entire town's identity. Outsiders came not for the beauty of the mountains, but for the story of the couple who vanished. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and even journalists traveled there, hoping to uncover the truth or at least catch a glimpse of something unexplained. Yet every time someone entered, they emerged with nothing but shivers, half-whispered claims, and the same gnawing sense of dread. The mystery only deepened, and the cabin continued to stand, waiting. 15 long years passed, and the story of David and Claire had become more legend than memory. The cabin still stood in silence, slowly rotting under years of storms and snow, but the case was little more than a faded headline. Then, in the harsh winter of 1996, a powerful snowstorm blanketed the mountains in ice thicker than anything the town had seen in decades. Roads were closed, power lines snapped, and the entire region was buried in a suffocating white silence. It wasn't until spring thaw arrived that something strange began to surface. A group of hikers exploring the ridge stumbled across a patch of snow that looked oddly disturbed. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than the remnants of a fallen tree half buried in the ice. But as the snow melted further, something caught their eye, a scrap of fabric clinging stubbornly to a branch. It was delicate, Frayed by time, but unmistakable. Pure white with a faint trace of stitching. The hikers brought it back to town, where it was quickly recognized as a piece of a wedding dress. The discovery reignited the town's obsession with the case. Investigators who had long since closed their files were suddenly called back into action. Forensic testing confirmed what many feared: the fabric matched Claire's wedding dress, the very one she had been wearing in her final photographs. But this raised more questions than answers. How had a piece of her dress ended up nearly a mile from the cabin, preserved in the snow for so many years, while everything inside the cabin had remained untouched? The area around the fabric was searched with meticulous care. Dogs were brought in, cadaver specialists combed the ground, and teams dug into the frozen soil with heavy tools. Slowly, more fragments began to emerge: shreds of cloth, bits of wood that looked like they'd been scorched, and small items that didn't seem to belong to the forest at all. Each discovery only deepened the puzzle. None of it explained why the couple had left the cabin in the first place, or how they ended up so far from it, without a single trace of struggle left behind. Rumors spread through town almost instantly. Some claimed the storm itself had unearthed secrets that were never meant to be found. Others whispered about the forest keeping things hidden until it chose to reveal them. For the families of David and Claire, the discovery was both a glimmer of hope and a stab of grief. After years of silence, the mountain had finally given something back. But everyone knew this was only the beginning of what lay buried beneath the snow. As investigators dug deeper into the thawing snow, what they found shifted the case from mystery to nightmare. Beneath layers of ice lay fragments of bone, fragile but unmistakably human. At first, searchers thought they had uncovered a single victim, but as more of the frozen ground gave way, it became clear there were two sets of remains, positioned unnervingly close to one another. The skeletons appeared to be locked together, their bones intertwined in a way that suggested the couple had clung to each other in their final moments. The positioning disturbed the forensic team. David's skeletal arm seemed to wrap protectively around Claire's ribs, while her skull rested near his shoulder, almost as if they had died embracing. But what unsettled experts most was not their closeness, it was the state of their bones. Long, jagged scratches marred the surface of several ribs and femurs, marks far too deep and deliberate to be explained by weathering. To some, they looked like claw marks, the kind an animal might leave, yet no predator in the Rockies was known to carve bone so viciously. Nearby, investigators found odd signs in the snow. The ground immediately surrounding the remains was pristine, untouched by the usual indicators of wildlife. No paw prints, no tracks of scavengers, nothing to suggest that animals had been there. And yet the damage to the bones was undeniable, deep, sharp, and consistent, as though something had attacked them and then vanished without leaving a trace. It defied explanation, leaving even seasoned forensic specialists whispering among themselves in unease. Reporters swarmed the site as soon as word leaked, capturing the grim retrieval of the skeletons. Photographs of the remains were never officially released, but whispers about their condition spread like wildfire. Some claimed that the skulls bore fractures suggesting blunt force trauma. Others insisted that the claw marks weren't random, but patterned, etched almost ritualistically across the bone. Whether these rumors were exaggerations or not, the discovery sent shockwaves across the community and reignited national fascination with the case. For the families of David and Claire, the recovery of the remains brought no comfort. If anything, the sight of the skeletons deepened the wound. The newlyweds had been found, but not in the way anyone had hoped. And the strange mutilation of their bones, paired with the pristine snow around them, left more questions than answers. Everyone wondered the same thing: what had hunted them in the frozen wilderness? And why had no one else seen it in the 15 years since? When forensic testing confirmed the skeletons belonged to David and Claire, the official story should have ended, but instead of closure, the discovery only deepened the mystery. Investigators couldn't explain why the couple's belongings, suitcases, clothing, jewelry, had been left neatly inside the cabin while their bodies were found a mile away, buried beneath years of snow. It was as if they had walked into the wilderness empty-handed, unprepared, and without reason, only to meet a violent end. No evidence suggested they were chased, no footprints or blood trails, and yet the remains told a story of something savage. The claw-like markings on the bones baffled experts. Wildlife biologists were brought in, but each one dismissed the idea of an animal attack. Bears and wolves would have left tracks, scat, or drag marks. Scavenger birds would have left scatter patterns. None of that was present. The scratches didn't match any known predator in the region. To make matters stranger, the bones showed no sign of typical decay from being exposed for 15 years. Instead, they seemed oddly preserved, as though the snow had been deliberately keeping them hidden until now. Conspiracy theories exploded overnight. Some believed the couple had stumbled upon something they weren't meant to see, perhaps illegal operations in the forest, or even a secret cult. Others swore the mountains themselves held something far darker, an ancient force that preyed on the lost. Paranormal investigators claimed the claw marks were not animal at all but symbols carved with intent, ritualistic in nature. Skeptics dismissed these ideas, but even they admitted the physical evidence defied conventional explanation. The cabin, once just a landmark of tragedy, became a site of pilgrimage. Paranormal groups set up cameras, hoping to capture proof of whatever haunted those woods. Some left with eerie recordings of whispers or strange shadows flitting past their lenses. Others swore their equipment malfunctioned the moment they stepped near the remains discovery site. Yet no one was able to provide concrete answers, only fragments of experiences that fueled the growing legend. It became impossible to separate fact from folklore. For David and Claire's families, the recovery of the remains was more torment than relief. They had spent 15 years in limbo, clinging to hope that maybe, just maybe, the couple had run away and started a new life somewhere far from the mountains. But the bones told a different story, one that was brutal, unexplainable, and terrifying. And as investigators closed their reports with more questions than answers, the town was left with a chilling certainty. Something had taken the couple from that cabin, and whatever it was, it had never been found. And so, the case of David and Claire remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries buried in the snow. What began as a romantic honeymoon turned into a nightmare that still casts a shadow over the Rocky Mountains. 15 years later, their remains were found, but the answers never were. The claw marks, the untouched snow, the silent cabin. Each detail only raised more questions than it answered. To this day, no one knows what really happened in those woods. Was it a crime, a curse, or something far darker than either? The mountains have kept their secrets, and perhaps they always will. But if you ever find yourself wandering too close to that lonely cabin, remember, David and Claire once thought it was the perfect place to escape the world. They never came back.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.